Hi, I'm Johanna Parkhurst, author and person who eats a lot of Halloween candy lately. So, I was really lucky when my friend Leah Bassoff, also author extraordinaire, invited me to come speak at her school, the International School of Denver, a while back. And a bunch of her students ended up reading my books and then wrote me a bunch of letters asking me questions about them, and they're amazing letters. So I wanted to take some time to share some of my answers, since a lot of these are questions I actually get asked a lot. So here we go. Let's see how many questions I can answer in a couple of minutes. Okay, this one's from somebody who read the book Here's to You, Zeb Pike, which happens to be on the giant poster of my face behind me. I know that's weird, but actually this is the only place in my house that's currently clean enough to shoot this video, so there it shall stay. Anyway, here's to you, Zeb Pike. This is the question. My favorite character is Emmett. Who is yours? Great question. My favorite character in that book is totally Emmett. I'm completely with you. He's like the love of all my characters, basically. In fact, I loved Emmett so much, I decided Emmett needed his own book. And I wrote Emmett his own book, and his book comes out in December of this year, which is crazy. It's called Thanks a Lot, John LeClair. I'm sure I'll end up talking about that more as I answer questions. But yes, Emmett is by far my favorite character. He's amazing. All right, let's keep going. What happened to the mom and dad? And did the main character ever see the New York man again? This is also obviously about Here's to You, Zeb Pike. And all I can say is that a lot of things are revealed and answered in Emmett's story, which takes place after the story. Some things are not, so I'm sorry for that. Maybe I'll write a third one someday. But if you can get a lot of your questions about what happens to these characters answered by reading Emmett's story, which, yeah, really excited about that book coming out. All right. This person said they really liked the flashbacks in the story. I'm really glad to hear that. The flashbacks were something that I really enjoyed writing. Flashbacks for me are a fun literary device because they give you a chance to see characters at multiple points in their lives. I did something similar, and thanks a lot, John LeClair. It's not exactly the same. I didn't want to keep it exactly the way Dusty's story ran. In Thanks a Lot, John LeClair, Emmett writes letters to his hockey hero, who is John LeClair, who, by the way, is a real live hockey player. So that was a lot of fun to write. All right. What inspired you to write this book? Still about Zeb Pike. Zeb Pike got a lot of questions, which is amazing because I love that book. So what inspired me to write this book? I was working with a couple of students who had parents who were pretty absentee and weren't around for them as much as they needed. And one of these students, we were really trying to find him books that he would like to read, books that kind of reflected his experience and gave him some hope. And it was really hard to find them. So actually Here's to You, Zeb Pike was very much inspired by some students of mine who I felt needed a book that kind of showcased sort of the things that were going on in their lives. Okay, so here's another question about Zeb Pike. I must have put all these in the same pile. I wonder how these characters are doing. What did happen to Dusty and Emmett? Did Emmett become a pro at hockey? I cannot tell you anything about that because that entire question is answered in Thanks a Lot, John LeClair. And I really, really am excited for you to see if you like what I decided to have happen to Emmett and Dusty. This one. To the student who said, "You are an amazing and really cool author. In fact, you are 2 scoops of awesomeness, 1 teacher scoop piled with nice whipped cream marinated in awesome sauce with cherry on top." That is the coolest and most original compliment I have ever received. Just thank you from the bottom of my cherry covered heart. That was, wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, the 2 scoops of awesomeness were really, yeah. Okay. Did you do research to describe the mountains in Vermont? So this question is also about Here's to You, Zeb Pike. I should just start leading with that, shouldn't I? Probably won't learn that lesson though. Really good question. So I actually grew up in northwestern Vermont, which is why a lot of my books are set there. It's where Thanks a Lot, John LeClair is obviously set. It's where Every Inferno is set. Both the settings in Here's to You, Zeb Pike are places where I have lived. Colorado Springs, where the book begins, is where I actually started my teaching career. And Vermont, where much of the book takes place, is where I grew up. So for me, it's fun to write settings that are true to my heart and true to my life because it's a way for me to kind of explore and think about places I've lived and really look at them in a different light, look at them through different eyes. So I didn't have to do much research. I just did a lot of thinking back to what that place looked like to me when I was Emmett and Dusty's age. This book is about Every Inferno, which sadly is nowhere on my walls. Sorry about that, but oh, look, here you go. Sometimes it's handy to have random copies of your books lying around. So that's Every Inferno. That's JJ's story. So This question is, your story was a page turner. I hope there is a sequel. I am sorry to say there is no sequel to Every Inferno currently planned. That book sort of like came to a pretty complete halt for me. I really liked where it ended up. That said, JJ and McKinley are also really, really, they're characters that are very close to my heart, and I would not be surprised if a sequel popped up eventually. Sometimes these things just happen. I am so excited for your next book to come out. Oh, thank you. That's so amazingly sweet, and I'm just always really touched to hear that. Thank you. So this person is also writing about Every Inferno. What is the moral of Every Inferno for you? I always think that's a really interesting question. So the thing about writing books, right, is like you write a book with your own purpose and your own lives for these characters in mind, and then readers read those books and they sort of give it a life of their own. So for me, this book was really about grief, and it was about overcoming grief and what it means to overcome grief and what grief does to people, really. It was my way of kind of exploring that. But I like to think that Every Inferno has a lot of different morals and messages in it, and that those can become many different things for many different readers. So I think what the moral of it for you is what is really important there. How did you come up with the storyline for Here's to You, Zeb Pike? Really good question. So the inspiration for the premise came from, you know, sort of life experiences of students that I was working with, things that I knew I wanted to write about. But the plotline changed very drastically over the course of many, many different drafts. I talk a lot about how I think this book went through like 55 or 60 different drafts before it finally got published, possibly more. And you can't even believe how much of the plot of my books change as I'm writing them. This book started with, you know, kind of the basic plot that's already there. He goes to Vermont, but the whole entire second half of the book is just insanely different. My plot lines just changed and rearranged, subplots moved around. I've talked before about how Emmett was not really planned to be a major character in this book. Initially, I planned for him to be a very minor character, and I ended up liking him so much that he just ended up being this huge character in the book, and, you know, he's now so big that he's getting his own book. So it's interesting how plots change over time, and I think one of the things I love talking about with people who want to become writers is the importance of not getting too attached to your first draft. I just wrote a first draft of a manuscript that has a lot of things wrong with it, and this book is going to change probably a million times over the course of me writing it, and that's okay. That's fun. That's the process, like seeing where it takes you and seeing where your plot lines go. So huge thanks to the students of the International School of Denver for reading my books and writing me letters with such incredibly thoughtful questions. I had a wonderful time answering them, and I hope you got some of the answers you were looking for. Keep reading, keep writing, and have an amazing school year.